Russian President Vladimir Putin issuing a warning today, saying his country is technically ready for nuclear war.
Точки зрения, мы, конечно, готовы.
This is the latest in a series of warnings issued to Western leaders since Putin launched his invasion of Ukraine more than 2 years ago. In a wide-ranging interview with Russian state TV, Putin also said if U.S. troops appear in Ukraine, Russia will treat them as interventionists. Joining me now is Dr. Ira Helfand, former president for the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War. He's also a recipient of the 1985 Nobel Peace Prize. Good morning, and thank you for being with us. I don't think I've ever spoken to someone who's won a Nobel Peace Prize. This is quite an honor.
Well, actually, it was the organization that won the Nobel Peace Prize, not me individually. But it's a pleasure being with you this morning.
Close enough. All right. So let's begin with your thoughts on the comments that we heard from Putin on Russia being primed and ready for a nuclear war. What is your reaction?
I think we need to take these threats very seriously. Putin has been threatening to use nuclear weapons in the Ukraine conflict really from the beginning. He's made these very explicit threats on numerous occasions. And it just underlines the extraordinarily dangerous situation that we find ourselves in today, where we missed the opportunity, perhaps at the end of the Cold War, to eliminate nuclear weapons. And now that failure is coming back to haunt us. And we need to seize this moment to change this trajectory, to reach out to the other countries that have nuclear weapons and negotiate their complete elimination.
Clearly, this comment, this line of questioning with Russian state TV was planned by Putin. I mean, comments like that don't just come up. What message do you think he was trying to send to the U.S. and to the world at this moment?
Well, I think this is the message he has been sending consistently since the beginning of the war, which is that Russia is using its nuclear arsenal as a shield to keep the West from giving Ukraine more substantial support. And the Biden administration in the United States and the rest of the West has been walking this very delicate balance, trying to provide appropriate aid to Ukraine to stop this Russian invasion, which is a clear violation of international law and must be resisted, but at the same time trying very hard to avoid having this escalate into a nuclear conflict that will destroy all of us. And the bottom line in this is that we should not be in this situation. Nuclear weapons should not be available to any country to use in this way. And we need to begin negotiations now with all of the 8 countries which have nuclear weapons so that they can all join the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and eliminate their nuclear arsenals. And although it may seem counterintuitive to think that this is the moment where we can make progress, when things are so tense between the United States and Russia, we need to remember that there was a similar period of tension in 1962 after the Cuban Missile Crisis, in 1983 at the height of the Cold War, and both of those moments were followed by rapid progress towards controlling the arms race. And we should take some measure of comfort from those past successes and build on them and reach out now to the other nuclear weapon states and try to change this terrible trajectory that we're currently on.
But aren't we on a different moment altogether? I mean, skeptics watching would think, why would Russia potentially give up their nuclear arms?
Well, why would the United States potentially have stopped the arms race in the 1980s? When Gorbachev reached out to Reagan, I think he had no expectation at all that the United States would respond. I do agree that at the moment it's probably not the Russians who will be our initial partners if the West reaches out. I think the United States in particular needs to reach out to China. Both the US and China have a very strong interest in not having a nuclear war. And that means they have a strong interest in getting rid of all nuclear weapons. And if the US and China together came to that conclusion and actively pursued a world free of nuclear weapons, I believe that together they could bring the Russians and the other nuclear weapon states along. We can't know for sure that this would be successful, but there's absolutely no reason not to try. Because if we don't get rid of these weapons, it is only a matter of time until they're used. And very terrible things are going to happen to all of us.
How big do you think Russia's nuclear supply is? How many weapons do they have?
They have about 6,000 warheads total. Many of them are in storage. They have about 2,000 tactical warheads and about 1,500 strategic warheads. Those weapons are deployed. And the U.S., on the U.S. side, the U.S. has about 1,500 deployed strategic nuclear warheads as well. the actual numbers in each case represents an enormous overkill capacity. We each can destroy the world many, many, many times over.
Final question then for you, Doctor. If we look again at Putin's comments through the lens of what is happening in Ukraine, what does that tell us, if anything, about Russia's plan for Ukraine and perhaps beyond?
Well, I think Russia is determined to gobble up as much of Ukraine as it can get away with. And I think the West needs to continue to figure out how to respond in a way which constrains Russia, but does not escalate to nuclear war. I think the real concern is that if Russia is successful in Ukraine, it will set its sights on other former parts of the greater Russian Empire, Poland, the Baltic states, Finland, and that will indeed lead to a nuclear war because those states are part of NATO. And if they're attacked, NATO will very definitely be drawn into the conflict. So it's a very difficult balancing act at this point, and it would be helpful if the United States could reach an agreement with China on the nuclear weapons issue, which could then perhaps be willing to provide more pressure on Russia to restrain its ambitions in Eastern Europe.
Dr. Ira Helfand, again, thank you so much for being with us today. We do appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.